Do we need prophets today? And if so, why? And then also, what role does the prophet has in the society today?
Well, the answer to it is that if prophecy is what I say it is, which is God speaking into the world, divine communications, which is God speaking his mind and his thoughts in our world, because, well, we can't hear him. He's inaudible, he's invisible, and he's not here in the flesh, so he's incorporeal. So all of those three mean that no matter what God says, if there is not some sort of medium to give voice to his word and our intelligence to what he's thinking, then we'll never know, and we'll just keep living in the dark. So prophets go all the way back to Abel. Before there was a church, before there was a nation or a country, the first prophet, according to Luke 11:49, was Abel. So to let us know why Abel died. So from Abel, before anything else, from Abel till now, God has always spoken, and he speaks through whoever will listen, but he actually institutes the office of the prophet through the people he built for it. So now, let's say, are they needed today? The question is, do we need to hear from God today? Do we need God to be silent? Do we want to silence him? Or do we want him to speak? Anytime that an institution, or an age rather, wants to silence God, then they shut up the prophets. When they want to hear from God, then they promote the prophets. So the answer to your question is, they're going to be needed as long as we don't know what God thinks.
And we'll never know all of what God thinks. So yeah, his thoughts are higher than our thoughts. Yeah.
And that is why it began in heaven with the angels, because even they don't know what God thinks. So he had a prophetic institution before he even created the world that we live in. In addition to that, until we get to a point that we don't need to ask God's questions about issues, or ask his mind, or even petition him for his intervention and involvement in our lives, we will need prophets, because God is always moving and doing, but somebody needs to tell us what that looks like and what it is.
That's true. That's true.
And that's the prophet. Now, your question, the second half of your question, I think is very important that we wrap our heads around that one. What is the prophet's role? Before Jesus came, and I talk about this in that book in detail, before Jesus came, the prophet's role was to bring Jesus into the planet. In other words, they prophesied his coming. They prophesied the seed of Abraham. Abraham was a prophet, so God told him who it is. He brought him on down the line through David, and all of the prophets brought us Jesus Christ. In other words, they are the medium by which the incarnation of the Son of God was going to take place, and that it actually arrived. Isaiah 7:14, a virgin shall beget a son. Okay, we will call his name Emmanuel. We all know that, Isaiah 7:14. Gabriel comes years later in Luke and says, well, you will get pregnant and you're going to have a son, and we're going to call his name Emmanuel. Okay, God is with us. So the first work of a prophet was Jesus Christ. Now, we don't do that today. When you hear prophets walk around or dance around Jesus Christ, they're probably not his prophets. They may have been ordained as prophets, but they're probably not his. Because the prophets exist for Jesus Christ. Because Revelation tells us that the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. So the first thing prophets should learn is Jesus Christ. Secondly, they should learn his word. So all the while Jesus was en route, the prophets set up his nation, communicated his nation, set up the leaders of his nation, kept the nation in touch with God and current on God's doings, administrated his government, enforced the law of Moses. That's what the prophets did under the Old Testament. Now under the New Testament, not that I agree with the Old and New concept of Testament because it's all one, but under the new Christ dispensation, Jesus is here. The prophets now say Jesus is it. This is what we are, and they make the connections. They connect. Hear this. This is so important to everyone listening today. The prophets are supposed to make connection between the Christ in the church world today and the Christ that was promised by the prophets, and explaining what God is doing globally, what he once only did locally in a single nation.
Say that again, because you broke up a little bit, but I want to make sure everybody really get that point.
But the prophets today their job is to point people back to the Old Testament that told us that Jesus was coming and said he arrived. It was a prophet that said he's here. Anna the prophetess, Simeon the prophet, and on we go. So John the Baptist. But their job today is to define for us and I want to use the word confirm and verify the Christ that we serve today is the exact same Christ that the Old Testament prophets said would come, that he's doing what they said he would do, he accomplished what he said he accomplished, and their job today is to verify what God is doing globally and that it is exactly what he's always been doing locally through the nation of Israel.